What do you expect Alvin Bragg to tell us on Monday?
I think what he's going to tell everybody and tell the court is that he's ready to go to trial. He's ready to put on his case, and that it should go to trial on April 15th, tax day. I think that's what he's going to say.
Okay. Do you think the judge is likely to buy that, considering that Trump and his legal team are asking for a much longer delay?
Oh, they're always asking for a delay. Absolutely, he's going to buy that, particularly when you just heard the fact that there are only about 275 new documents, none of which really amount to a hill of beans, that really don't relate very much to this case. So there's no way that by April 15th, all of these lawyers, including Donald Trump, can't read these 275 documents.
We're talking about a 6-week trial at this point, right, Mr. Akerman? That said, you start this in April. There would still be ample time for another trial to take place if the Supreme Court rules against Donald Trump in this immunity case that's before the court.
Oh, absolutely. That would actually dovetail quite nicely. Because if the Supreme Court rules, as I think it will, that Donald Trump does not have immunity on the allegations in the D.C. case relating to January 6th, then that case will follow right after the one in New York, which would be quite fitting because the one in New York really relates to how Donald Trump won in the first place by lying to the voting public about various people who had information on him and keeping that information disclosed from the public, secret from the public. Whereas the other case really relates to how he tried to stay in power after he became president. So the two cases really dovetail nicely with each other.
Well, and of course, it's not the only two criminal cases he is facing. There is also the election subversion racketeering case in Georgia, as well as the documents case in Florida. We had reporting yesterday that Fani Willis, who, of course, has been allowed for now, although it's pending appeal, to stay on that case, despite concerns about the fact that her former partner was on the case and being paid. She has suggested still, according to this reporting, that she would like to see that case go to trial this summer before the election. Is that really realistic, Nick, considering her even ability to be on it is still facing appeal?
Well, I think that appeal is really going to go nowhere. The judge issued a very detailed, well-reasoned opinion. It's very clear that the defendants did not meet their burden of showing any kind of conflict here. So what it really comes down to is, will Fani Willis's case go before the case in Washington, D.C.? And if the Washington, D.C. case goes first, will the Georgia case follow that? Both of these cases actually hinge on the Supreme Court decision with respect to presidential immunity, because both of them relate to criminal activity perpetrated by Donald Trump while he was president. So I think what will happen here most likely is that once the Supreme Court holds that there is no immunity here, the D.C. case is likely to go first, and that could be sometime in June or July. And then after that, I would expect that we'll see the Georgia case follow. Don't forget, the Georgia case is going to be a bit longer of a case. There are more defendants. It's a little bit more complicated because of that. The D.C. case is only one defendant, Donald Trump, which was designed that way, especially because they wanted to keep it simple and to make it a fairly straightforward trial.
We've got two important moments that will arrive on Monday. One we've already talked about, that's the hearing in Alvin Bragg's case against Donald Trump. But he's also got a deadline to put a bond in this $454 million judgment against him in the civil fraud case in New York. The Attorney General, Letitia James, could begin trying to seize his assets as soon as Monday. She's even taking a look specifically at properties in Westchester County. Do you think that actually happens, or is that just an empty threat?
Oh, no, I think it's real. I mean, she could have done this 30 days ago. She gave him 30 days as grace period to try and get it together. It's obvious he cannot, even though he said this morning that he had $500 million in cash. Well, if he's got $500 million in cash, that's going to be the first amount that Letitia James is going to seize with a restraining notice on Monday. What you can do with that judgment is basically just blanket the town, blanket the world with restraining orders until you get all $500 million. And it's not only his properties, but it's all of his bank accounts and brokerage accounts. And once she does that, that's it.
Well, if you were his campaign manager, for example, your answer to this question would probably be different. But if you were his attorney, would it be prudent for Trump to just file for bankruptcy? Is that the advice you would give? That's probably the only out he has. And even that is only going to delay matters for a bit. Even with that delay, the interest is going to continue to run on the $500 million that he owes. So, yeah, it probably is the most prudent thing to do if he thinks there is some way that he can get the money together in the next few months and use that breathing time to do that. But I don't really see any viable alternative here. Even what you discussed earlier in the show about this media company that he's got, I don't know who would ever put up $500 million with that stock as collateral down the road, which at the end of the day may not be worth that much, because this is not a company that is at all profitable. In fact, as we just heard, it's losing a lot of money. So there's no way to know what that's really going to be worth over the long term. And on that basis, I can't think of any normal investor or anybody who would be foolish enough to put up a bond for $500 million based on that stock.